Right, apologies. We have Councillor Collins absent on council business, John Walker for absence, Councillor Fletcher and Wayne Walker for lateness. I'll put those apologies, I'll move those. Second by Councillor Sayers. All those in favour?
Aye.
And welcome, Paul, to your first finance meeting. So
Thank you.
good to
Thank you, Chair.
be around here as well. Okay, declaration of interest. Any declarations of interest? No. Confirmation of the minutes. We have Councillor Sayers. Yep.
Yeah, Ross, just I think it was recorded that I was on business meeting. The last meeting I wasn't. I was out of the country on holiday. So if we're able to correct that to just absent from the meeting.
Yep.
Not on business.
Happy for that to happen. I'll move the minutes, and we're going to make it one amendment to the minutes, and seconded by Councillor Hills. All those in favour?
Aye.
You must have been moving in.
Okay, you're on to it, everyone. There are no petitions. And public input, we have Claudia Maran. Welcome, Claudia. You have 5 minutes, Claudia.
Kia ora koutou, atamarie. My name is Claudia, and I'm presenting on cities and philanthropy and the strategic partnership, the power of making space in cities to enable philanthropy to provide for communities. So as a result of my involvement with Ponsonby Park, I've noticed a large gap of philanthropy-based funding, assisting cities to reach budget targets as various projects around Auckland are needing more funding. While Auckland has allowed areas of commercially private investment into civic life, it is limited in examples of large-scale projects assisted by philanthropic giving. It is my hope that the city may be able to utilize philanthropy in an organized manner to build a more livable city faster for our people, and my presentation today aims to inspire you using some examples I've seen in the recent months in California and in Melbourne, Australia. So for me, I wrote this, community means a place where everyone can contribute and participate in their own special or unique way in a safe, inclusive environment they feel they belong to. And I put places for good because that's kind of what I'm trying to promote more of. Today in 2018, many people do not have the time to volunteer, but for those with financial resources, philanthropy is a way they can uniquely give back to their city or community, a way to leave a legacy. I'm going to show you just a few site-specific examples I found in my recent travels and research that demonstrate the power when you enable philanthropy into civic spaces. So here is the Rotary Play Gardens, and it was written into the long-term plan in San Jose, California in 2002. They did not sell any parts. They took a tiered approach so the city and community could gather funding to make the most of the whole public open space that the growing city desperately needed. The Rotary Club believed if they got the right people involved, it could happen. So this park was valued at over 9 million New Zealand dollars, and it was completed in 2017. It's an example of various tiered donations, building a community place, and examples of how you can uniquely give back. So if you look at the slides, there's the City of San Jose, so the city itself is the primary funder, and then the Rotary Club was pretty much spearheading the whole partnership, and then slowly you get into more lower levels, and then on the next slide, I don't know if it's working, oh there, you can see that the 5,000 to 10,000, they had plaques going down to below $50. So your name was etched in stone while you entered the park, even if you gave $50. And that's how they, over 10 years, 15 years, gathered it. And everyone who goes back there can show their children, hi, I'm part of the Samaritan group or the Sparks family. And that's in the higher end, but you could see John Smith in the $50 to $100 range etched in stone to show that everyone could give back. So this plaque of donations allows individuals and families to feel connected to places that are important to them. They have a Turanga Waiwai, so when they bring, it's a place they stand, and so you're giving community and philanthropy a way to connect overtly, but also build city spaces for themselves. Family name, and it follows generations to come. And then here, on the bottom left, is just opened in Melbourne. It's called the M Pavilion. And this is the Children's Gallery sponsored by the Gandel Foundation and the Ian Potter. What's special about this M Pavilion, which you can look up more deeply, is it's from the Naomi Milgram Foundation, and it was only founded in 2014. And specifically, they say, to enrich Australian cultural life by engaging new audiences with exceptional art, design, and architecture for all of Australia. And it has become a model. So this pavilion here is a model for a public-private collaboration, enabling new projects with a focus on public, industry, and education. So in this pavilion here, they have weekly, daily, hourly talks, education, kids' activities, and it's a collaboration between a philanthropic foundation, the city, ANZ, and various other funders. And once they're done with that piece of equipment, this is the 4th one they've made, they donate to the country of Australia, and they place it somewhere where it goes on to stay. And this particular architect is a Spanish architect, so they get global, they make it a world city without having to spend too much money, using the partnership instead as a model. And then on the right here, the Gandel Foundation above, their values are to promote community values, cultural dialogue, foster community cohesion, build community spirit. So a lot of these current Australian models are all about community and using always the philanthropy based off them building off each other and not just, they're more open and working together.
Claudia, you're at 5 minutes.
I'm at 5 minutes? Okay, so I'll just go to the end. I just have the last thing to read. So that's the San Francisco playground you can read about. So what I hope you will take away from this, council and city are not the only entities with the sole responsibility or motivation to develop our communities for good. But if we only rely on commercial funding to fill this gap, the risk is that we inadvertently turn these places into unwelcome spaces. We need to ask ourselves, what can the city provide? How much more do we need? And where are these opportunities to let philanthropy fill those gaps? If we don't make space and invite this to happen, we will miss the opportunity. Like these examples I've shown you, we need projects in our city to sow the seed and make way for philanthropy to grow and flourish in our community. Any questions?
Yeah, Claudia, some of the examples, has the city approached the philanthropists or vice versa?
We've had one meeting. What I found interesting when I meet with the various foundations is they don't know about each other. And we've met once, so we're going to try to make another meeting, but the CEO of the Auckland Foundation, which is the newest philanthropic area opening in the city, has just changed. So you'll make these strategic partnerships, and usually the leader changes. So hopefully in this next year, 2019, the actual leaders of these groups in these partnerships stay in their positions, because I've only been doing this for 3 years voluntarily, and I've gone through maybe 20 different leaders or assistants or... So for community people who are volunteering their time trying to build these places, it's tricky to get it all connected. So if we had a more cohesive approach from the beginning, it would be good, I think.
Councillor Simpson.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Claudia, thank you for what you're doing, and I think it's certainly got a lot of opportunities in Auckland, because people love their communities and often want to, if they have the opportunity, to contribute themselves. My question is, I've got 2 questions. My first one is when you've seen these projects in Australia, for example, is it CapEx and OpEx? Is the Philanthropy Council model one that is not just paying for the asset, i.e. a playground, but for its long-term costs associated with operating that, its maintenance and etc., over a period of time?
So I think as the OPEX and the operating cost becomes more of a worry in budget, what's growing from these philanthropic foundations is they're working out creative ways to solve it. So in the last slide, which I didn't get to, this is another foundation. That lady in the elevator there is another foundation, and they operate all the new parks. So they're non-violent offenders, paid minimum wage or living wage. So there's different ways you can solve this operating costs. So most cities are giving the seed money, and then a philanthropist is matching it, and there's other philanthropic wings that deal with the running of it, and also still with the city, but it's still having it usually across the whole board. So it's a little bit of both, but it's creative ways like that where they're taking non-violent offenders from prison and putting them as, and they're part of the community too, so you're giving them purpose. And I had a 1-hour conversation with the ex-offender who is opening the gate for every single person entering that park, and that's the safest I've ever felt in San Francisco in my entire life. So it's just creatively mixing city with community and operating and CAPEX and OPEX cost.
And my second question, Mr. Chairman, is probably to the Mayor. Your Worship, are we doing anything to pursue this as an opportunity? Are we looking at what cities are doing offshore in so much the way they're working with philanthropy and looking at those guidelines? And is someone bringing that together and potentially presenting it to us?
Yeah. As Claudia mentioned, the Auckland Foundation is changing its chief executive. The former chief executive's gone to the YWCA, and I've met with them to talk about some of the projects that they may have an interest in. So that particular foundation, they want to work more collaboratively with Auckland Council. Foundation North has a long-standing relationship. But, you know, I think with both philanthropy and with the corporate sector, totally agree with Claudia's point about really working closely alongside them to see how people can make, how we can facilitate people making a contribution to their city as, you know, something that they can feel good about and that will be worthwhile to the city. So, yeah, we're trying to do more of that.
Good, because Mr. Chairman, I think that's the key to it. We need to be open and welcome opportunities and welcome people's input. And to do that, we need to have the policies and procedures that we feel comfortable enough to have that dialogue. So I'm just hoping that there's a work stream somewhere being developed.
Yeah, thank you, Councillor. Yeah. Yeah, that's what the purpose of this was, that if from the beginning for any future projects there's some system and policy in place where it's a dialogue that's consistent and can follow through past changes of CEOs and leaders, that's forever basically for our future generations to tap into and utilize as a way of getting projects they want to see in their community, big or small. Any more questions?
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and through you. Thank you for your presentation. I think it's really timely given all the development that's happening in the community and the need for infrastructure that's going to have to follow with all that development. I'm aware of projects where we have involved philanthropy. So with Te Oro, we, got extra funding from philanthropy, a rowing building in Ngāhau Maiangi in Mount Wellington. So I wanted to know what's happened specifically with your project that's brought you here today.
So our project's more of a city building one, so it's a $7 million budget. The park, they're deciding whether it's half or full, so I was for the last 3 years creatively finding ways to finish the project if the funding's not there, rather than sell off the asset. Because I think the biggest issue in this problem coming up today is the split of Panuku and Auckland Council. So once Panuku is in charge of a commercial asset, which my park is technically a commercial asset, it's more people to deal with, the community finds it hard to communicate, and it's just, I'm trying to protect, in a way, assets that council might own that are in Panuku's management, but also in the community has. So similar to a community hall or something could be another issue. It's just organizing a way that the community can say, we have this need, we've managed to fund the need, whether it's 1,000 or 1 million, can we please keep this asset in the city hands, even though the city says they don't have the budget to keep it, we found the money. Does that make sense? Yeah. And so, and places like Britomart, as far as activating them, because if they're dead, then people think we don't need them. But if they're activated with planning and activities, then all of a sudden you realize it was an asset. And I can only tell you 20 times we have a play date there. But if you see a Kapahaka performance, a food truck, you all of a sudden feel like, oh, that's an asset we should keep, which they do at Britomart now and Smells Farm. But those are both private places that are activating it. So we're just trying to empower communities to activate their own spaces with philanthropic funding and the support of council. So it's when you're trying to activate and utilize public space, it's so gray and really hard to legally know you're doing the correct thing, but so good for the community. So I find myself often in gray areas where I might be breaking the law, whereas it's a lot easier for a private place to say, I'm going to put this here, and my community loves it. Does that make sense?
Councillor Sayers.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Chair, and thank you, Claudia, and thanks for your enthusiasm. And and I just look, my question had already been asked, but I just wanted to acknowledge the answer from the Mayor. It's very good to hear that we're looking at the, as you said, the policies and strategies to try and make this a little bit of a smoother process going forward. And thank Councillor Simpson for her question, which prompted that. Yeah, very good.
Great minds.
So thank you.
Thank you very much. Oh,
Councillor Holmes.
Yeah, two quick things. First of all, thank you, and yeah, the ongoing work you're doing. It seems that we've heard a few times from you, and I'm just hoping that we're matching some of the enthusiasm. So I've got a question, but I've just got, I guess maybe a bit of good news. We are looking at, in the park space, at proactively activating the spaces and working with community groups, like I'm working out west with Sport Waitakere and the council staff on how we activate those community spaces to get people out, enjoying them, using them and feeling safe in them. So I'm going to suggest, Mr Chair, that we take that part of it, and maybe Councillor Filipaina and I will follow that up and get a report through to the Environment and Community Committee that can go out to the local boards and encourage the philanthropic side of things. The second thing is just a question to us. We, Councillor Simpson, myself, and can't remember who else, we met
Councillor
with
Cooper.
Councillor Cooper. We met with some of our philanthropic groups and our council staff working in this area, and we talked about coming up with a shopping list of big and small things that our philanthropic sector might like to partner with us, and I'm not too sure if we've progressed that, and I think from the Finance Committee's side of things, that's a good thing to progress. And just a little shout out, I guess, to the way the licensing trusts work. We're very close to our community, we know what's needed, we actively go out and seek, you know, ways to support our community. I think as a council we could do that a little bit more proactively. So I guess the question is to us, Mr Chair, is that a good idea for us to follow that course of action?
As a Westie, I can say yes, because if you look at the Trust Stadium out there, that was the private money raised was about 15 million out of 35, if not a bit more. Tauru Gallery in Titirangi was 6 million was raised out of 20, and then the Tefau Coastal Walkway, which is happening at the moment. But I suppose that's the Tefau Coastal Walkway is a good example, because it's quite hard work getting our money to match. In this case, it's NZTA money and Auckland Transport money, and it's quite hard to convince them to get into, our CCOs to get into that sort of behaviour. Councillor Filipaina.
Thank you, Chair, and thank you so much. I mean, that you're being acknowledged, and I reinforce all the comments that have been made. I haven't got a question for you, but I do, however, just want to flow on from Councillor Hulse. And Chair, there's actually quite a bit of work that needs to be done here, because you've got the local board, that's one. You've also got our CCOs in regards to big work, and Councillor Hulse mentioned parks, but you've also got public art. You know, and we've also have somebody looking at major sponsors and philanthropic area in regards to public art, and again, you know, Councillor Hulse, so, you know, this is timely in regards to getting something that gives us a regional picture with our local boards, with our CCOs that are looking at parks and everything else, but also with our public art. So, you know, I think you have sort of started, and I remember your kōrero previously. So, you know, Chair, I think we need to, but there's different streams that we have to go through, and I've just mentioned 3.
thank you, Councillor. To answer that too, what's been fascinating in this process since 3 years ago, since before when I started it, was how disconnected everyone is. So Foundation North doesn't even know Auckland Foundation exists. So if I'm trying to get money, I actually have to end up going to 2 places when one might be already funding it. So it's just, there needs to be some sort of in-between person, or Strategic Partnerships does that in the commercial level, but maybe if you're going to do it with communities, it really needs to be organized so the community members who are often volunteering have an easy way to access funding to their project. And I went to a workshop last weekend where it was supposed to be Foundation North, Internal Bureau of Affairs and Auckland Council, and only Foundation North showed up. So when you do try to get that, you need to make sure everyone's at the table, because there was amazing projects looking for funding and one person representing when there should be three. So my plea is that we can move forward in a method that works for my children to go through this process if they have projects to work together.
Well, thank you, Claudia. Well, I mean, we've got a pretty good example again last week where we had another offer of a free stadium for $2 billion. It's not going to cost us any money. And I'm all for that. I'm all for that. So we have a mover and a second to thank Claudia for addressing the meeting, moved by Councillor Simpson, seconded by Councillor Hulse. All those in favour?
Aye.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.